Hello everyone. I'm Olga Yarshevsky, Head of Content for Next Change Group, and I'm happy to kick off this discussion as part of the pre-event roadshow prior to Africa Blockchain Week Virtual Conference 2021. Introducing our amazing experts today. Amrita Sethi, an award-winning multimedia and NFT artist, creator of Voice Note Art. Hi, Amrita. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Olga. Thank you so much for having me today.
Mohammad Sear, the Digital Government and Public Sector Consulting Leader, Ernst & Young Africa, India, and Middle East. Hi, Mohammad. Good to see you.
Hello. It's really nice to be here as well today.
Good to see you again. Welcome. And Juwan Lee, the dearest colleague of mine, Chairman and CEO of Next Change Group. Hi, Juwan.
Great to be here, Olga.
Thank you, everyone, for coming together for this discussion. So the topic for our talk today is overview of blockchain in Africa. And I would like to start with Mohammad. Can you tell us what are the most exciting and interesting developments in tech application and in blockchain application have you come across lately?
Actually, when you talk about emerging technology, obviously that's much broader than blockchain. I'll focus on a couple and then maybe spotlight on blockchain as well and let others to contribute. But if I look at AI, for example, is probably the most interesting and exciting one that is emerging, especially through the COVID period. We've seen a lot of interesting examples coming about and governments trying to leverage more and more AI as a service, and whether it's for customer experience improvement or is to do with business operations, we're seeing a lot of that happen. I would also say 5G data network rollouts, those are starting to expand. And of course, that opens up a huge amount of opportunities for the enablement of machines, robots, and automotive vehicles, because collection of data and then obviously a transfer of data becomes much more possible with the speed that 5G brings. And of course, this will spearhead the whole IoT sector and is already doing that. And a very interesting one is this extended reality, so how virtual reality, augmented reality is now morphing into this extended reality. And we're seeing some very interesting immersive use cases come where, you're getting this immersive digital experience. And blockchain, of course, when it comes to especially the supply chain, and in particular, the medical and pharma supply chain, we're seeing some interesting emergence of the blockchain. And finally, I'll just touch on like personalization and moving towards more predictive and proactive services from governments using different emerging technologies.
Yeah, so actually, my next question was about the what's new for digital governments. And I know that the things that you just mentioned are really applicable to what digital government and public sector could do.
Yeah, applies to both, but I would say a lot in the kind of digital government space, personalization of service delivery is something that we see a lot more governments now trying to grapple with and see how they can get more specific and personal with the content they're providing to citizens, and moving towards more of a proactive and predictive model of delivering services. So, for example, you and I not having to apply for renewal of our passport, yet, in opposed to that, the government, reaching out and telling us your passport is expiring, so would you like us to send you a new passport? That kind of mindset, we're seeing a lot of interesting shifts towards that. And one other thing which you can say indirectly is linked to emerging technology is behavioral insights and science. That we're seeing a lot now in government starting to use that as a technique to understand the users, understand how policy making can be more successful, and also implementation of policies in governments, which tends to be a challenge, especially in developing countries, Africa being one region where always we've had some challenges in the implementation of policy.
Does it apply to African governments' policy towards, let's say, self-sovereign identity or, expanding financial inclusion narrative?
Yeah, I think the whole chapter around this digital inclusion how do we look at combating some of the exclusion that exists today between rural and urban populations, especially in Africa. Digital is enabling that reach to even the urban areas. The challenge only is that whilst on the one hand, this is something so proactively useful that it can give access and connectivity to the urban area, the rural areas, because of limited access and limit also the capacity, the digital literacy level, or even you can say from a financial economic affordability perspective, it becomes a little bit challenging. But we see a lot of interesting movement in that direction, where governments in even Africa are starting to experiment with moving towards more of a digital government construct.
And I assume that African governments here are using something of an international experience, right? So they're trying to learn from other emerging tech hubs here, right?
Yeah, I would say on the digital government side, especially, they are looking to learn from the experiences of the leaders in digital government. If you look at the UN EGDI ranking, the top countries like you have Denmark and you have Estonia, you have Australia, UK, these countries, New Zealand, you know, all of them have gone on this journey of really transforming the way they operate and using digital as a core for their moving forward in terms of service delivery. So we're seeing a lot of learning coming from that, especially with Estonia. There tends to be quite a bit of understanding between the states, and they're signing MOUs to help with transfer of knowledge and supporting with moving forward their strategies.
Thank you. Now, from governmental side, I would like to move to the ecosystem part. Juwan, here's to you. Why do you think it is so important to bridge Africa to other blockchain hubs in the world, in different parts of the world? And I think this is one of the, I know that this is one of the main goals of our event, Africa Blockchain Week.
Yes, Olga, I think one of the most important aspects you have to understand about Africa is that, I'll give you an example. In Nigeria, the trading in cryptocurrency is one of the highest in the world. Nearly a third of the population is trading cryptocurrency. So as a percentage, it's probably one of the highest in the world. So when you take certain parts of Africa, the 50 plus countries, it's not all of Africa, because remember, 40% of the population only has access to mobile internet. So it's certain select markets. And why is it important is that we're going to leapfrog into the next generation in Africa. So it is important that we're connecting the hubs from around the world: Singapore, Hong Kong, China, in UK, Silicon Valley. All around the world, I think is very important, because we have an opportunity where there is a desire and implementation that's already taking place in Africa, that we need to use the latest technology by creating the proper ecosystem where people are connecting. We can bring the world to Africa with the right level of technology and leapfrog.
So people are already actively using cryptocurrency. This is one of the greatest examples of blockchain adoption in Africa. What are other ways to promote blockchain in this ecosystem throughout African countries? How do we enhance this community?
Well, I mean, you have to take into consideration, I think an important part of it is, you know, everybody talks about the unbanked, right? If you want to set up a bank account, you have to walk us considerable ways in certain parts of Africa just to set up a bank account. I've experienced my own, you know, I guess, pain point in terms of transferring money, getting money, setting up a bank account. All those things are challenges. So when you start to talk about, you know, digitization, that's one of the things that's taking place that is very important in terms of maybe potentially setting up digital banks, and already payment platforms are already prevalent throughout Africa. So that's one example. But I think there are many more examples that fall outside the financial services area. I think these are like areas that are focused on agriculture. It's very important as a part of the African continent, where the source and you trace the from the beginning to the end in terms of the origination and where the actual final product goes. Those are the things that blockchain can be very helpful. It can be also very helpful in the health industry to track the records of from birth to death. So these are just some of the applications, and I think there are many, many more than that that are relevant for what blockchain can be used in Africa.
And how will Africa Blockchain Week help here?
Well, I think, when you look at the first stages of developing an ecosystem, you have to kind of take an inventory of who's out in the ecosystem. There's governments, and we've been talking to governments, to central banks, to all the players in the ecosystem, the startups, the service providers, the influencers. You have to kind of know and take an inventory of who they are. And by creating an event, what you do is you expedite that because you have a final date where you have to get that done by. And then you're basically developing partnerships all throughout that journey. And then you're having people speak about this. So one of the biggest goals out of this is to develop a level of a base for which education can be promoted after the event. So we are now setting the base of this and the connectivity, and that I believe that the starting point really is just Africa Blockchain Week. There are many, many steps after that, which are very important to develop blockchain in Africa.
Thank you. Now to Amrita. Amrita, art is something that basically connects everything. And blockchain and art is indeed a very exciting combination. And lately we've seen that it gave an enormous boost to NFTs. Everyone's so excited about NFTs. Can you tell us a bit more about your background? I know it's very interesting. And how do you think, how and why NFTs have come all the way from crypto collectibles to the global market of art?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I've got a special link, I would say, with African Blockchain Week because I'm actually from Africa. So I'm originally born and brought up in Kenya. I'm one of a third generation of Indian origin Kenyan. And if you know, then you know. Like many people in in Africa, you've got a mixture of people from lots of different parts of the world that got taken, or brought to Africa in different ways. So for example, my family had originally, I originally had 3 generations ago come from India, and then we moved to Kenya like 3 generations ago. But I've also lived in other countries like Uganda and Zimbabwe. So for me, I've never gone on the west coast of Africa, I have to admit, but I'm very much of from everything from the east coast of Africa is a very familiar world for me. So I'm very kind of honored and privileged to be, representing, I would say, as an African artist for African Blockchain Week. And so, yeah, so just in terms of, where I fit in is that I've recently, I'd say about a year ago, I became an NFT artist, and I found out about NFT art because of what's happened in COVID and the pandemic. But my history was originally in finance. So I'm an ex-banker. I have worked for some of the world's largest, companies, insurance companies and banks. And then about 3 years ago, I decided to go for what I'd say a more entrepreneurial calling. And that's how I got into art, because I had taken that time off to kind of just connect to my creative self. So I create this concept called voice note art. And what I do is I capture a word by saying, so I say a voice note. So it could be a city, it could be a person's name, it could be a feeling, it could literally be any word. And I capture the shape and structure of that sound wave. And then the individual lines of the sound wave I draw to match the meaning of the word. So when I created voice note art, originally I actually created it as a digital artist, but like most digital artists, before NFTs became, available, one would had to almost take them to a physical state, whether it's like a physical print or painting a mural or creating a sculpture, to be able to realize it. But because of the technology of blockchain and then the introduction of NFTs and this kind of really, I would say, this boom within the NFT world, that has then allowed me to really take my art or my concept and my art form to a whole nother level, which I'm super grateful for and super happy that I discovered NFTs. And I discovered all of that during, as I said, during the pandemic. And from there, I then became the first artist in the UAE to have my NFT portfolio. And that's it really. But I'm based in Dubai, but I'm from Kenya and Africa originally, and now an NFT artist.
Very interesting. That's really exciting background. It connects all the dots here. Your financial background and now digital art and Africa, and now you live in Dubai, right? And you used to live in Europe. So this is something that connects it all. So what do you think are the prospects for NFTs? We've seen a lot of hype lately,
Yes, I mean, it's amazing for me. I really enjoy the fact that people have now beginning to understand NFTs, because last year when I launched my portfolio, if I said the word NFT, nobody knew what I was talking about. I mean, I could have been speaking a whole nother language altogether. And in fact, at the time, I would just call it digital art, right? Because, for me, everything in our lives have kind of gone digital. Everything, even like say watches, TVs have got more smart, everything's gone digital, yet the art market is the only one that hasn't gone digital. And the reason why it hasn't gone is because how do you then, previously, before blockchain, how are you going to create the concept of rarity and scarcity from a digital asset without being able to mine it into the blockchain? Because otherwise it's as I've said, as a lot of people kind of comment, isn't it just a JPEG? Isn't it just a soft copy which everybody can have access to? But being able to mine it into the blockchain, being able to have that unique identifiable code is then what kind of creates that rarity and scarcity. And I think, while there is a big hype, I think the big hype is justified because the people who understand really the technology behind and what it means for the future of the creativity in the art scene, it's a very exciting one. And I think that we're just at the beginning, just like when the internet came. Yes, it was version 1. Look how much the internet has improved and got better and more innovative. And I think you're going to see that from digital art or NFTs. And because ultimately prior to this, NFT or digital artists haven't been able to really, I would say, realize, a profit from it. But the more that they are able to, the more they're able to then put that money back within an innovative structure and create more amazing art. So I think what we're going to see is NFTs are going to create art experiences, not just being able to look at a 2D image on an art thing. So I think it will create almost like a new medium of creativity, which I'm super excited about.
Do you have anything special for Africa Blockchain Week?
So, I mean, I think, yes, we've got we've got something exciting coming up. Within my voice note art series, I tend to start with, my first collection was actually of cities. So I've done, I've captured, for example, the word Dubai, or I've done Nairobi even as well. And I've captured the name and structure of the word, and then the elements of the artwork I've drawn to match that. So I'm extremely excited to say that I'll be doing a unique commission piece for Africa Blockchain Week within my voice note art style, and for the city that it's going to be hosted in.
From Morocco, right?
Yes, that is correct.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, so it's and so I'm really, because what I want to be able to do is with voice note art, it tells the story, right? So, you know, whenever you paint a portrait of somebody, so if I was to paint a portrait of you in a very traditional sense, I would just be doing a very kind of still 2D image where I'm trying to capture your essence. Whereas what I'm going to be doing is working alongside, you know, the participants of Africa Blockchain Week, as well as the organizers. And what we're going to try and do is capture that story, capture the story of the city, capture the story of the future of what Africa Blockchain Week can bring, not only to Morocco, but to all the other countries within the continent. And I'm excited to be able, and privileged to be able to tell that story.
That's amazing.
Okay, if I can interject,
Sure.
I have a comment to make. I think this is very important. Amrita is an example of what I call the new generation of the creator economy. And this isn't something that resides in developed markets, but also the opportunity for people in Africa to create art, some form of asset, and not sell it for as many, I guess, as high a dollar value as some of the art that we've seen that make the news, but to create art or some form of asset that they're able to exhibit their own, you know, talents and create a trade from this. So I think what's important, you know, Amrita being African and also an artist and also becoming accomplished in what she does, is to set a model for those who are watching Africa Blockchain Week to inspire them, because we have moved from a shared economy to a creator economy. And this is the next generation of where we're heading towards. And blockchain is enabling this to happen based on the ability to make something one of a kind and authenticated.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to add to that, Juwan, is that for me is, you know, prior to me discovering NFT art, I'm an artist, but I'm also a collector. And actually my collection is mainly of African art. And so I've always, and obviously traditional African art. And, you know, because I'm from Kenya and I go back regularly, I'm a big supporter of the community there. I meet artists when I go there. I try to understand their process. And that's not just only from Kenya, but also from, I've got an art collection from every, you know, from artists from all over the continent. But also knowing what, you know, the kind of innovation and the creativity I feel that comes from so many artists in Africa. I'm super excited to see what kind of opportunities are gonna, or what kind of creativity, what kind of art is gonna come when we take some of the talent that we have, combine it with blockchain, add an element of technology there. And I think we're going to see, because it's already been, as you know, as Juwan said, already leapfrogged to a certain level of technology and understanding. I think we're going to see some of the best artwork coming out of the continent, and especially within the NFT space. So I'm super excited about that.
I mean, if I can also chip in here and maybe broaden the conversation, because for me, what's fascinating about this whole shift from the physical economy to the digital economy is it really democratizes the whole economic model in the world. You know, now you could be sitting in any part of the world and you're providing a service to anyone in the Western world, the Eastern world, you know, wherever that may be. So it's creating this, you can say, panacea of opportunity for many of the developing countries who haven't had the opportunity because of the cost of being able to penetrate more developed countries. So the internet itself, or the online world, is in a way, you know, bridging that gap and really making it much more affordable for anyone anywhere in the world to access. So the access part of it is being, you know, really revolutionized by this whole evolution of the internet and where we are today. We call it the digital space or the digital world. But the absolute priority in the developing countries has to be about how do we really build a digital literate nation? Because if you think about what is the raw ingredient into any nation, is its people. The more literate you are, the more you've been able to develop innovation, develop ideas, and you've been able to be successful in the world scene when it comes to economic, art, whatever it may be. And if the governments of Africa especially do not take this opportunity to leapfrog and create this environment to enable their citizens to be able to operate, work, live, play, service in the online world, then we will have lost a very great opportunity of this whole environment being democratized and making it, like kind of a level playing field, giving access to everyone, to anyone and everywhere, everywhere. This is the creativity is one really small, I would say, part of all of this. But as a great change that is taking place, is really up to policymakers, politicians to really think about their whole environment. How can they really transform it? Because let's not forget, we at the starting first are a citizen before anything else. It doesn't matter, I'm a politician, I'm a policymaker, I'm an artist, I'm a citizen before anything else. And being able to think about how do I make a change in my countries or the environments I'm dealing in should be our priority.
I have a follow-up question for you, Mohammed.
Can I interject here,
yeah,
Olga, just real quickly?
Sure.
Mohammed makes a very great point about democratization.
Absolutely.
And how it's tied to the digitization. And this is, what's always I find interesting is out of catastrophe, there comes an opportunity, right? So out of the pandemic comes this amazing accelerated digitization need. It was forced, it was accelerated, it was, without it, it wouldn't have, the economies would not have been able to, grow in this environment. So I find this whole pandemic very interesting because it's done such an amazing job in terms of really getting everybody to focus on just being connected, and that you can do this all decentralized, that you don't have to be in the same space, same place. And also the fact that, there's so many things you can do without traveling and being in the location next to each other. So this is really what oftentimes the main philosophy behind blockchain is. So I think this is a very important part, that there's an evolution of what's happening in terms of technology has been accelerated through a pandemic.
Absolutely. And before Olga, you ask your question, this is why blockchain to me is so critical, because it enables this whole new economy. And anyone, sitting in, let's say, the rural areas of Kenya will be able to potentially sell something and have it secured through blockchain. So that kind of, whether it's art or something else, is content, you name it. And particularly when I look at some of the challenges that we have seen in Africa and other developing nations around the contracts for real estate and stuff, blockchain obviously creates a real new opportunity for shifting some of these centuries old problems of being able to ensure that title deeds or whatever contracts we have signed are not possible to be revoked. Sorry, Olga, you had a question.
Yes, it's actually about how does this connection between governments and let's say a business ecosystem works, because we've seen this a lot in for example in the US or in Europe, right? Because blockchain community is in many ways way ahead of regulatory framework. of legal framework. It goes way ahead of governments, and it has to educate governments and let governments know about their needs, so therefore they can create an appropriate legal framework. How does it work in Africa? Is it the same way, or is it the other way around? And here, government has to pull the business ecosystem, the business community up.
I think two things before going specifically on that. I think you know my personal views also, that our world has changed so significantly over the last couple of decades, 2-3 decades. And I believe that we are at a point where we really need to reimagine government as a model for the digital era. Most governments are taking an approach of digitization. Let's look at what we do today and let's see how we can do it digitally. And I'm saying that we will miss an opportunity if we don't take a step back and say, because so much has changed, how can we reinvent or reimagine a model of governance that really is apt for this digital era we are in, where we have much more connectivity with the citizens, which wasn't there before. Technologies enabled us to be in touch with our citizens on a day-to-day basis. So in policy making, decision making, whatever that may be. And of course, there are many different technologies that are there. But one key component of that is, and why I wanted to say this, because it links back to what you're saying, is that in that model, what I call smart government model, is fundamental, is about being ecosystem based. So how does a government move away from being more of a doer to more of a facilitator and more of a enabler, and really moves towards an ecosystem model of developing policies and developing services and delivering services. So in Africa particularly, I think because we don't have the same level of maturity when it comes to the private sector, I think whilst we've seen blockchain being driven as a concept by the private sector in most countries, not all, some have been more proactive, like UAE had created basically a strategy for blockchain, and they really proactively have been pursuing that as a strategy. We've not seen many governments get directly into this area. They've got into AI, they've got into IoT, but blockchain seems to be still a little bit behind. So I would say that African governments have an opportunity to spearhead the thinking in this, and they should be driving this agenda, getting all of the stakeholders together and saying, how do we collectively benefit from this? How do we even use this to stimulate our digital economy so we can create startups? But at the same time, how do we look at using this technology and governing it in a way that actually doesn't stifle the whole creativity? You want to put in place some regulations, obviously for protection purposes, but the way blockchain is, it's kind of self-regulating, right? So it's the whole point of it being immutable is the fact that once you have transacted on something, it's not possible to break it. So it needs attention, and the governments need to bring their heads together with the stakeholders to drive it forward.
Mohammed, can I ask a question? I mean, obviously, isn't a lot of it down to education? So also, because I mean, just from my own personal experience within, say, from even explaining what an NFT is, just in my little world, I mean, obviously, as you said, art is just a small part of the overall picture. But I would say that even within, obviously within the UAE and other parts of the world that I'm talking to, is everybody still getting their heads around what is a non-fungible token? So if, and I think it's that is like, you almost have to educate people on really what is really a blockchain, and also how much do people really need to know what a blockchain is, because with other technologies in our life, we don't question the mechanics of a car or I mean, some people do, but I mean, other people, not everybody knows the mechanics of everything we do digitally, yet for some strange reason, I feel everybody is wanting to know the mechanics of blockchain, the mechanics of a NFT, when it's the overall concept which we need to focus on rather than the technical jargon.
Very much agree with that. And that's one of the things, I mean, when I talk about digital literacy, and most governments are being if they have a digital literacy program, when you double click and look at it, you'll find that actually it's very, very basic towards more IT. It's okay, how to use technology. And when I talk about digital literacy, what I'm trying to say is, as a citizen, how do I operate, live in this digital world that we're in today? How do I operate in the physical and the virtual space, in the online space simultaneously? And I want, I call it smart citizens. Smart citizen will know their responsibilities in the online world. They will know that they should not be bullying. They will know that doing something, giving false information, fake news is wrong to do. Whereas if you look at today, what's happening, the whole online space is filled with fake news, with um, you know uh, with a lot of information content which is not verifiable. So just imagine how blockchain can play a role in validating and verifying, making sure that you and I as citizens know that this is a verifiable piece of information because it's been tokenized in some way. So digital literacy, I believe, has to be much broader in its entirety, to be teaching our citizens, so we know what it means, what does some of these technologies mean, the benefits of them, and being aware of how do you live and play and entertain in the online space. Physically we know what to do, but online space, how do we do this? That digital literacy needs to come.
Yeah, so I think one of the important points that I would like to emphasize for Africa Blockchain Week, which is just the beginning of what I say a journey, and we have with our local partner, the Amrita Group, set aside many objectives post the event. But I think, when we look at what needs to be done, Amrita, you're right on track. It's about the education, and it's not just about art. It's about multiple areas within what digital transformation and blockchain can be, how it can be useful for your everyday life. And also when you educate, you're, elevating the level of education, broadening and heightening their, the workforce in terms of what they can be employed to do. And since blockchain is so decentralized, when you learn about these things, you can work for a UK company or some company in Asia, but you're actually located in Africa. So this is very important objective of Africa Blockchain Week, which is the education level. And I think, when we look at what we're doing so far, the event is being supported by, and one of our partners, the African Union. And this is a very important step towards getting the message out to a much broader group of people in Africa, and that we want to use this relationship, this partnership to, make sure that we can reach as far as possible within the African continent.
I completely agree. I can only kind of speak a lot from my own personal experience, but in a way, when we talk about, or when I talk about kind of digital education, I would say, when I look at the Western world, or people who come from that kind of longer history of this kind of physicality and then moving to a virtual world, sometimes it takes a lot longer for people to be able to make that mental shift, right? Whereas what I find that, because ultimately when you look at, say, a token or an NFT or anything that's mined into the blockchain, what it gives is your liquidity purpose for you to be able to trade very easily. Now, if you just look at the case, everybody is familiar with the case study of M-Pesa in Kenya. The comfortability that majority of the population have of just being able to send cash like that doesn't exist in the Western world. It doesn't. I live in Dubai. If somebody just said, well, just send me that, I'd be like, okay, I don't know how that works. And if you look at how that works and translates into a Western, very centralized economy, your UK or US, it becomes a very different conversation, right? Whereas what I feel that I think what it is exciting with, especially with going into Africa, is that the malleability of people's virtual understanding. I feel that a little bit of education, I think, can actually get much further, because there's already a kind of practicality in that in everyday use anyway, as it stands.
That's a good point.
Something you may or may not be aware of, but I think I'll mention it because it's important. So the European Commission last year in December, launched an initiative which is called Digital for Development, which is a digital cooperation with Africa. And the whole idea is to, again, from a digital economy perspective, and they're planning to establish hubs which will be able to connect Europe and Africa in terms of the digital, development of digital solutions and digital economy. So there's interesting developments happening, with different regional collaborations as well within Africa. So that shows you also that if the European Commission is interested in creating this kind of link, that Africa is definitely the next frontier for the development of digital.
And one of the things I also would like to emphasize, the little amount of time, and I think, Amrita, you can talk to this better since you're actually African and you spent more time there. The little amount of time that I spent in Africa is very clear. There are many Africas, okay? There are many different regions. And there's collaboration, and then there's tension. So this is something that's very important to understand, that underlies the movement of a whole African continent technology shift, that there are many different countries, all with different agendas, somehow with and different regulations that are either promoting or prohibiting things in terms of blockchain and cryptocurrency. So this is a very important aspect that we must understand as we start to develop this ecosystem.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as I said, Africa is a massive continent, and there are lots of different countries. It's the same within Europe. It's, you could even say, arguably for the US, each kind of state and each country has its own cultural way of doing things, historically. And I think sometimes the problem is that, that I am from Kenya. Sometimes it all kind of gets lumped into this one continent of Africa, when actually, each country has its own strengths, weaknesses. They're all at their own different journeys, either politically or economically, or even from a digital sense. So I do think it needs to be very careful not to, push the brush with one stroke, to use a painting analogy, across all of them. But what I do think is very exciting, though, is that going back to saying it's not a level playing field, but I do think the kind of blockchain technology, especially on the art side, makes it a bit more of a playing field, which we were talking about earlier, Mohammed. And, within the art space, or even I'd say in the block or the kind of digital space, it's this kind of use of pseudonyms that have started to come in. So, the guy who bought the Beeple artwork for $69 million, his avatar is Metacovid, and yet his name is Vignesh and he's from India. Now, one of the important things as to why he said he went to go and he revealed his identity is that it's a way of a global level playing field, whether it's from India or from Africa or from Asia, that whether it's, the new artist, the new famous artist, whether it's the new billionaire, whether it's the new trillionaire, whether it's the new millionaire, that can come from anywhere now. And as long as you've got access to the internet, access to the digital infrastructure, that all of a sudden, the people who were not able to have opportunity for reasons that were restricted from physical borders are now able to have immense opportunity. So what is the difference between an African artist going and mining their own NFT, sitting in the depths of Kampala, to an NFT artist in California? They have the ability to mine, they have the ability to have a pseudonym, so they could be anyone from anywhere. And all of a sudden, it just becomes about their ability to be an artist or an expert in their field, whether it's writing or poetry or business. And I think that's what I find is the most exciting thing for not just art, but all other content creators or other opportunities within this space.
One of the best things about blockchain is, simultaneously getting rid of borders while preserving very specific geographical factors and also cultural identity. Now, unfortunately, we're out of time. We could go on about this forever, I guess. One last round of very quick questions to all of you. What is the greatest blockchain application so far? And what is the best way to promote it in Africa? Amrita, you should go first. I know what is your favorite blockchain application is.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for me, it's NFTs, but I do also think is this decentralization of finance. And I think given my own experience living in Kenya and Uganda and Zimbabwe and other countries, I think this will be a real big game changer.
Mohammed, what about you?
I think for me, it's going to be around the tokenization of contracts and smart contracts, those kind of things. I think this is extremely beneficial and value giving, especially in the context of Africa. And in terms of how we should promote it, I think really the governments have a role to play and other stakeholders as well. The more innovation that can be enabled in this space will start to create more startups, new ideas, new innovations. So I think from a school level upwards, we need to be starting to get our kids of the future to really innovate, whether it's blockchain or something else, because we all, whether we like it or not, are going to be operating in this digital world.
True. Juwan, what about you?
I think specifically for Africa, it is connecting the unbanked. So basically, digital banking is very important. I think that's a big disruptor. And in Africa, it can't be any more important for those who are living there.
And let me also speak from my side. I think one of the best applications is also self-sovereign identity. And it's one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest achievements for African people to get their own identity, to go to a bank or to go to a digital bank, to get medical help, to get involved into supply chains or value chains. It's one of the best prospects for all the people in this region. Well, thank you so much. I'll guess we'll get to talk to it more quite soon. Everyone, please go to africablockchainweek.com. There's a free registration open there. We're looking forward to seeing you very, very soon. Africa Blockchain Week 2021 takes place from June 28th to July 1st. We're so excited to see everyone, to see Mohammed, to see Juwan, Amrita, and over hundreds other speakers at the virtual summit. Thank you again so much. Have a good rest of your day, and thank you. Bye.